The moment still echoes in my head. She's just a housewife. My stepson laughed when he said it, loud, confident, and the courtroom laughed with him. I remember gripping the edge of the wooden bench, my fingers numb, my heart pounding so hard I thought the judge could hear it. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. People don't just underestimate you, they erase you. And in that courtroom, surrounded by lawyers, whispers, and judgmental stares, I was invisible. But what none of them knew was that I was the reason that boy was standing there at all. My name is Emily. I'm 42 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've lived inside a quiet, suffocating family drama that I never asked for, but paid for in every possible way. When I married Daniel, I knew he came with history, a failed marriage, a son from that marriage, a woman who still hovered like a shadow over our lives. I told myself I was strong enough to handle it. At first, I truly believed we were building something real. I left my corporate job when Daniel's consulting work started requiring constant travel. We agreed, together, that one of us needed to be stable, present, grounded. So I stayed home. I ran the household, managed finances, helped with school applications, sat through parent-teacher meetings, stayed up late proofreading essays. I did everything a real parent does, without ever being called one. And slowly, the family drama began to change shape. At dinner, my stepson Jason barely looked at me. When I offered advice, he smiled politely, then ignored it. When I corrected him, he rolled his eyes and waited for his father to leave the room before muttering, "You're not my mom." Daniel noticed, but he never intervened. "It's just a phase," he said. "He's under stress." That sentence became the excuse for everything. The disrespect, the manipulation, the quiet rewriting of my role in that house. Over time, I stopped being Emily. I became just the woman who cooked, cleaned, paid bills. Just the housewife. And that label followed me everywhere, especially into court. You see, this wasn't just about a custody hearing, or a college trust dispute, or a bitter divorce aftermath. This was about recognition, about truth, about whether years of emotional labor count for anything when money, titles, and egos enter the room. And as Jason laughed that day, mocking me in front of strangers, I finally understood something that had taken me years to accept. This family drama wasn't an accident. It was engineered, and the people who benefited from it never expected me to stop playing silent. They thought silence meant weakness. They were wrong. Looking back, the signs were there long before we ever stepped into that courtroom. I just didn't want to see them. After Jason turned 16, something shifted in the house. He stopped asking for help altogether. No more late-night questions about homework, no more rides to debate club, no more quiet conversations in the kitchen. Instead, there were locked doors, whispered phone calls, sudden meetings that Daniel said were none of my concern. That phrase stung more than I admitted. None of my concern. After years of managing everything, I was slowly being written out of my own home, and the family drama deepened in ways that felt subtle but deliberate. Jason started using words that didn't sound like him. "She's not contributing. She doesn't really do anything. She's living off Dad." I heard those phrases repeated so often that I almost believed them myself. Gaslighting doesn't come with shouting. It comes with smiles, shrugs, plausible deniability. Daniel never raised his voice at me. That would have made things easier. Instead, he questioned my memory. "I never said that. You're overreacting. You're too sensitive." Slowly, my confidence eroded. And the real betrayal? It wasn't loud. It was legal. One afternoon, while organizing household files, I noticed something missing. Documents related to Jason's college fund. I remembered filing them carefully. I was meticulous like that. But they were gone. When I asked Daniel, he laughed softly. "You worry too much, Emily. Jason and I are handling it." Handling it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. This wasn't just teenage rebellion or marital tension. This family drama had layers: financial, emotional, strategic. A week later, a letter arrived, addressed to Daniel, marked confidential. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I saw the logo, a legal firm. When I confronted Daniel, his face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Why are you snooping?" That word, snooping, hit me like a slap. I wasn't snooping. I was surviving. That was the moment I realized I was no longer part of their plans. Decisions were being made without me, about money, about Jason's future, about my role, or lack of one, in it all. The family drama was no longer emotional, it was procedural. And Jason, he knew. He started testing boundaries openly now, ignoring me in front of guests, correcting me when I spoke, laughing when I fell silent. Once, when I asked him to lower his voice, he smirked and said, "Relax, you're not important anymore." Daniel said nothing. That silence was louder than any insult. That night, sitting alone at the kitchen table, I felt something crack inside me, not into rage, but clarity. They weren't confused, they weren't stressed, they were preparing, and somehow in their version of this family drama, I had already been erased.
I stopped asking questions after that. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood the rules of the game. In this family drama, information was currency, and the more I asked, the weaker I looked. So I watched instead. Daniel began coming home later than usual, not tired, focused, as if every move he made had already been rehearsed. Jason mirrored him. Same tone, same dismissive smile, same confidence that I no longer belonged in their inner circle. That kind of alignment doesn't happen by accident. One evening, while clearing the dinner table, I overheard them in the living room. My name floated through the hallway, sharp and careless. "She won't fight it," Jason said. "She doesn't even know what's happening." Daniel replied quietly, but not quietly enough. "She won't have standing. She never officially worked." My chest tightened. Never officially worked. I had managed budgets larger than Daniel's consulting income. I had coached Jason through academic competitions, internship applications, networking emails. I had written recommendation drafts that other adults signed their names to. But none of that left a paycheck trail. And in this family drama, what couldn't be quantified was disposable. That night, I opened a storage box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old notebooks, calendars, emails printed and annotated, certificates from mentoring programs I'd volunteered with before Jason came into my life. I hadn't kept them to prove anything. I kept them because they mattered to me. As I flipped through the pages, something unsettling became clear. Jason's biggest achievements, his awards, his scholarships, his polished public persona, were all tied to years I had guided him, structured, corrected, pushed him when he wanted to quit. I wasn't just a stepmother, I was his mentor, and somehow he had rewritten that truth. A few days later, the official notice arrived. Court date: dispute over educational funds and guardianship authority. My name was mentioned only once, not as a contributor, not as a caretaker, but as Daniel's spouse. I confronted Daniel that night. "You're letting them erase me," I said, my voice barely steady. He sighed, the way someone does when they think they're being patient. "This is just how things work, Emily. Don't make it harder than it needs to be." Harder for who? The family drama had reached a new stage, not chaos, but coordination. I was no longer facing emotional neglect. I was facing a narrative designed to discredit me. Jason started avoiding me entirely. When he did speak, it was calculated. "You should stay out of court," he said once, not unkindly. "It'll be embarrassing." That word again, embarrassing. I realized then that he wasn't afraid of the truth, he was counting on it never being heard, because in his mind, I was already defeated. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had stopped trying to be seen. I was preparing to be undeniable. And the courtroom they thought would silence me was the same place where their version of this family drama would finally crack. The courtroom smelled like old paper and polished wood. Everything felt too quiet, like the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. I sat behind Daniel and Jason, one row back, hands folded neatly in my lap. No one looked at me, not the lawyers, not the clerk, not even Daniel. That was intentional. In this family drama, invisibility was part of the strategy. When the judge entered, Jason straightened in his seat. He looked confident, almost relaxed. He wore the same suit I had helped him pick out years ago for his first academic conference. The irony didn't escape me. The proceedings began calmly. Numbers, dates, legal language designed to drain emotion from real lives. Then Jason's attorney gestured toward me. "And who is this woman present today?" The room shifted. Jason turned around slowly, his lips curling into a smile that made my stomach drop. "She's just my stepmother," he said. Then he laughed. "She's just a housewife." A ripple of amusement moved through the room. Not cruel laughter, worse, dismissive laughter. My heat rushed to my face. My ears rang. For a second, I couldn't hear anything except my own heartbeat. Years of work, years of patience, reduced to a punchline in a family drama I had been living inside for over a decade. The judge raised an eyebrow. "And what is your involvement, ma'am?" he asked me. Before I could answer, Daniel's lawyer interjected smoothly. "She has no formal employment history related to the matter, Your Honor. No financial contributions to the educational trust." No formal, no financial. The words stacked neatly, like bricks sealing me inside a box. I swallowed and stood up. Jason cut me off. "With all due respect," he said, his voice steady, rehearsed, "she didn't raise me. She didn't pay for my education. She just stayed home." The word "just" hung in the air. This was the breaking point of the family drama, the moment where everything I had endured came into focus, not as misunderstanding, not as neglect, but as erasure. The judge studied me for a long moment. "You may sit," he said calmly, and I did. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood something powerful. This wasn't the moment to defend myself. This was the moment to let them expose themselves. As the hearing continued, Jason spoke confidently about his achievements, his leadership, his independence, his future. Each sentence built on the idea that he had succeeded alone. Daniel nodded along, and with every nod, something inside me went quiet, not in defeat, but in resolute. Because the more they talked, the clearer the truth became. Their story only worked if I stayed silent. And for the first time in this family drama, silence wasn't something forced on me, it was something I chose. The judge called for a short recess. As people stood and murmured, Jason passed me and leaned in just close enough for me to hear. "You see," he whispered, "you never mattered." He walked away smiling. He believed the courtroom was already his. He had no idea that this humiliation, this public dismissal, had just set the stage for the one thing he never expected: recognition. During the recess, I didn't cry. That surprised even me. I sat alone on the wooden bench outside the courtroom, staring at my reflection in the dark glass of a closed office door. My face looked calm, almost detached. That's how I knew something inside me had shifted. In this family drama, I had spent years reacting, defending, explaining, shrinking. Now, I was done performing. When the hearing resumed, the judge adjusted his glasses and glanced down at the file again. Something about the tone in the room had changed, subtle but real. "Before we proceed," he said, "I have a few clarifying questions." Jason straightened, ready, confident. "Mr. Carter," the judge continued, "you've spoken at length about your independence and accomplishments. Who prepared you for these academic competitions? Who structured your early development?" Jason hesitated. It was brief, but noticeable. "I had tutors," he said finally. "My father supported me." The judge nodded slowly. "And your recommendation letters?" Jason looked toward his lawyer, then back at the judge. "Various mentors," he replied. Mentors. The word hung in the air like an unfinished sentence. The judge turned to Daniel. "Mr. Carter, would you like to clarify?" Daniel cleared his throat. "My wife assisted occasionally," he said, "but nothing formal." Occasionally. The family drama was unfolding exactly as I had anticipated. They minimized because that was the only version of the story they knew how to tell. The judge leaned back. "Interesting," he said. Then he turned to me. "Mrs. Carter," he said calmly, "I understand you were advised to remain silent, but I'd like to hear from you." The room froze. I stood slowly. "I won't take long," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I'm not here to claim financial ownership. I'm here to clarify mentorship." Jason frowned. I reached into my bag and handed a folder to the clerk. Inside were copies, not originals, of calendars, program registrations, signed mentorship forms from academic organizations, and email chains with competition coordinators, all with my name on them. No emotion, no accusations, just facts. I've mentored students for over 15 years, long before Jason lived with me. The methods I used with him were the same ones recognized by these institutions. The judge flipped through the documents. The silence stretched. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger. This was family drama meeting documentation. Jason shifted in his seat. "He never said she didn't help, she just—" The judge raised a hand. "Enough." He looked directly at Jason. "You laughed earlier. You dismissed her role as insignificant." The judge's gaze moved back to me. "Mrs. Carter," he said calmly, "in your professional opinion, did you act as a mentor to this young man?" "Yes," I replied simply. "And were you acknowledged for that role?" "No." The judge nodded once. That nod changed everything, because for the first time in this family drama, someone with authority saw the imbalance, not emotionally, but structurally. And Jason, he finally looked unsure. Not angry, not defensive, just unsure, which told me everything. The silent revenge wasn't finished. It had only just begun. The judge didn't speak right away. He reviewed the documents again, slower this time, not skimming, studying. Every page flipped felt heavier than the last. The room had gone completely still. This was no longer just a family drama. It was an evaluation of credibility. Jason tried to recover first. "With respect, Your Honor," he said quickly, "none of this was official employment. She wasn't paid. She didn't have authority." The judge looked up sharply. "And yet, many mentors are unpaid. Authority doesn't always come from money." That sentence landed like a quiet verdict. Daniel's lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Daniel waved him off. His jaw was tight now. The confidence he had walked in with was gone. The judge turned to Daniel. "You allowed your wife to take on significant developmental responsibility while simultaneously benefiting from her unpaid labor." Unpaid labor. For the first time, someone said it out loud. In this family drama, we often see contributions minimized when they are inconvenient to quantify. Jason shifted again, this time unable to hide it. His knee bounced under the table. His earlier smirk was gone. The judge addressed him directly. "You laughed earlier. You dismissed her role as insignificant." The judge's gaze moved back to me. "Mrs. Carter, In your professional opinion, did you act as a mentor to this young man? Yes, I replied simply. And were you acknowledged for that role? No. The judge nodded once. That nod changed everything, because for the first time in this family drama, someone with authority saw the imbalance, not emotionally, but structurally. And Jason, he finally looked unsure. Not angry, not defensive, just unsure, which told me everything. The silent revenge wasn't finished. It had only just begun. The judge didn't speak right away. He reviewed the documents again, slower this time, not skimming, studying. Every page flipped felt heavier than the last. The room had gone completely still. This was no longer just a family drama. It was an evaluation of credibility. Jason tried to recover first. "With respect, Your Honor," he said quickly, "none of this was official employment. She wasn't paid. She didn't have authority." The judge looked up sharply. "And yet, many mentors are unpaid. Authority doesn't always come from money." That sentence landed like a quiet verdict. Daniel's lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Daniel waved him off. His jaw was tight now. The confidence he had walked in with was gone. The judge turned to Daniel. "You allowed your wife to take on significant developmental responsibility while simultaneously benefiting from her unpaid labor." Unpaid labor. For the first time, someone said it out loud. In this family drama, we often see contributions minimized when they are inconvenient to quantify. Jason shifted again, this time unable to hide it. His knee bounced under the table. His earlier smirk was gone. The judge addressed him directly. "You laughed earlier. You dismissed her role as insignificant." The judge's gaze moved back to me. "Mrs. Carter, in your professional opinion, did you act as a mentor to this young man?" "Yes," I replied simply. "And were you acknowledged for that role?" "No." The judge nodded once. That nod changed everything, because for the first time in this family drama, someone with authority saw the imbalance, not emotionally, but structurally. And Jason, he finally looked unsure. Not angry, not defensive, just unsure, which told me everything. The silent revenge wasn't finished. It had only just begun. The judge didn't speak right away. He reviewed the documents again, slower this time, not skimming, studying. Every page flipped felt heavier than the last. The room had gone completely still. This was no longer just a family drama. It was an evaluation of credibility. Jason tried to recover first. "With respect, Your Honor," he said quickly, "none of this was official employment. She wasn't paid. She didn't have authority." The judge looked up sharply. "And yet, many mentors are unpaid. Authority doesn't always come from money." That sentence landed like a quiet verdict. Daniel's lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Daniel waved him off. His jaw was tight now. The confidence he had walked in with was gone. The judge turned to Daniel. "You allowed your wife to take on significant developmental responsibility while simultaneously benefiting from her unpaid labor." Unpaid labor. For the first time, someone said it out loud. In this family drama, we often see contributions minimized when they are inconvenient to quantify. Jason shifted again, this time unable to hide it. His knee bounced under the table. His earlier smirk was gone. The judge addressed him directly. "You laughed earlier. You dismissed her role as insignificant." The judge's gaze moved back to me. "Mrs. Carter, in your professional opinion, did you act as a mentor to this young man?" "Yes," I replied simply. "And were you acknowledged for that role?" "No." The judge nodded once. That nod changed everything, because for the first time in this family drama, someone with authority saw the imbalance, not emotionally, but structurally. And Jason, he finally looked unsure. Not angry, not defensive, just unsure,
which told me everything. The silent revenge wasn't finished. It had only just begun. The judge didn't speak right away. He reviewed the documents again, slower this time, not skimming, studying. Every page. Life didn't magically improve the moment I walked out of that courthouse. That's something people rarely talk about. There was no dramatic music, no instant sense of victory, just exhaustion and an unexpected calm, the kind that comes after you've finally stopped holding your breath. The family drama didn't end that day, but it changed. Daniel moved out within a month, not because the judge ordered it, but because the power dynamic he relied on no longer existed. Without my silence, without my invisibility, there was nothing left to control. We finalized the divorce quietly. No fights, no theatrics, just paperwork and distance. Jason never apologized. I didn't expect him to. In his mind, acknowledging me would mean rewriting the story he had told himself for years, and not everyone is brave enough to do that. But something else happened. Months later, I received an email from one of the academic boards involved in the case. They invited me to formally consult on a mentorship program. Paid, recognized, official. For the first time, my work had a title. I accepted. That's when I realized the real lesson of this family drama wasn't about revenge at all. It was about visibility. I spent years believing that if I just worked harder, loved more, stayed quieter, I would eventually be valued. But silence doesn't earn respect. It only teaches people how much they can take. What the courtroom gave me wasn't validation from Jason or Daniel. It gave me something far more important: language. Words to describe what I had done. Proof that care, guidance, and emotional labor are real, even when they aren't paid. I stopped introducing myself as just a housewife. Now, when people ask what I do, I say the truth. I mentor, and I watch how differently they listen. The family drama taught me that betrayal doesn't always come with cruelty. Sometimes it comes with entitlement, with the assumption that your contributions are invisible because they are convenient to ignore. Healing didn't mean forgiving them. It meant forgiving myself for staying silent for so long. Today, my life is smaller, quieter, and infinitely lighter. No walking on eggshells, no explaining my worth, just peace. And if there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this: never let anyone convince you that your role doesn't matter just because it benefited them to believe it didn't. So I'll leave you with a question. If someone had laughed at you the way Jason laughed at me that day, what would you have done next?